Many of our social movements are deeply rooted in language.
The cultural domination of Hindi on Marathi culture, that is the worrisome factor.
Hindu zealots have the knack of antagonizing even people who already know Hindi.
Under the grab of Hindutva politics, they thought that we have one religion, one language, but that is not true.
Thank you, and thank you, co-panelists. And we have a challenge actually. We have to keep this audience interested after a very nice lunch. At the end of this thing, you will get an opportunity to ask questions. So if you don't ask questions, you will be asked questions. So you have to be really alert and be engaged with this conversation. Language, as you all know, is a very contentious topic today, but it's not only today, it's been the history of South Asia for the last 100+ years. The collective identity of South Asia has several markers: language, religion, caste, etc. being some of them. But in many historical junctures, the religion and language have alternated as a primary marker of identity. The classic or the most violent manifestation of that debate was the partition of the subcontinent, where based on religion, the subcontinent was divided, but what was divided was further divided based on language, which is Pakistan and Bangladesh. Now the wheel of history has turned full circle, that in Bangladesh we see a political phenomenon wherein language is now pushed to the sidelines and a more dominant identity of expression of religious identities coming into play. So to start this conversation on a very open-ended question, so how significant or critical is language as the marker or a definer of collective cultural identity? Would you like to go first, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Deshmukh.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. Language is a very emotive issue. Language is part of our day-to-day life, but it is also transcends that. I want to start with a little incident. Just a few months ago, I was traveling to Tanjavur, got off the train at Ariyalur, and took a car to Tanjavur because you can get to Tanjavur faster. Halfway between these two towns is Keezhapaduvur, the hometown of Keezhapaduvur Chinnasamy, who immolated himself in 1964, January 25, in the anti-Hindi agitation. It was dark, but the statue, the bust, was still quite visible. And standing in front of that bust, my eyes kind of welled up. I didn't realize that, it would be emotive for me also. So language is very central to our identity, not just for the last 100 years, probably for more than a millennia, because many of our social movements are deeply rooted in language. Even the Bhakti movement is strongly rooted in language. It is in many parts of India. Bhakti movement was a protest against the hegemony of Sanskrit and Brahminical rituals. So, but what we find in the last 100, 150 years, in the modern period, is that it is tied to the fast-paced social transformations and political transformations that are taking place. And
so without a shared language, Chalapathy, without a shared language, is the construction of a collective identity possible? The biblical story about the Tower of Babel, the destruction of a community happens when they speak in different tongues. So we have similar kind of mythical stories from different civilizations. The basic premise being that a shared language is essential for a nation. How would you respond to that?
I think this is mostly the European model of the nation. So that is why we find even immediately after the Second World War, you found the great displacement of peoples. It was not just on ethnic lines, but language is very much part of that ethnic identity. So the attempt to have one single language, especially through force, has consistently failed. Rather than forge unity and strengthen unity, it often ends up weakening that identity. So, India, for instance, has had a certain civilizational unity without having a single language. Why that should not continue to be possible in the 21st century is something that really beats me. I'm sure we can continue to be a very thriving, democratic, plural society and a strong nation with our languages, because our languages are, they have long histories. They are so deeply rooted, and great harm and violence is done to that by the forceful imposition of a single language, and especially language which is, more a modern construct rather than something that is deeply rooted and evolved.
Mr. Deshmukh, you've been a very vocal critic of the manner in which Maharashtra government tried to introduce Hindi as a third language in primary school. So I remember reading a very interesting formulation that you made and quoted in the Hindu only, that this is perhaps a very unique situation of a migrant community's language becomes or is sought to be made a dominant language in a native community. Would you explain what?
Yes. The issue of imposition of Hindi language as a third compulsory language from the first standard, the decision is uneducational, it is irrational also. Maharashtra never opposed the three language policy per se. We have no Hindi also, because from the first Education Commission, which was initiated in 1968 by Kothari, Mr. Kothari, this is called Kothari Commission on Education. Maharashtra has adopted three language policy, but we are teaching our students second and third language, that is English and Hindi, from fifth standards. After some time in 2001, because of the spread of English medium schools and more demand from the parents, we introduced English as a compulsory language, second language in Maharashtra from first standard. So we are now adopted two language policy for the primary education. And our opposition is imposition of Hindi is based on the NEP policy only. NEP policy, National Education Policy 2020. The national curriculum framework based on the NEP propagated only two languages up to fifth standard, and from sixth standard they are exposed to the third language. So all of a sudden, without any demand from any quarter, government of Maharashtra think to introduce third language, and they issued the government resolution. And then the reaction came, and I, being the chairperson of the Language Advisory Committee, we are supposed to advise government of Maharashtra about language. If you want to take some action or some initiative regarding language, then they should consult us. But without consulting our committee, which is the committee of expert persons, government has taken that decision. So we are opposing it. Though I am honorary president of this committee, but as a free thinker and caring for the Marathi language and Marathi culture, we have started agitation and we are opposing it. So language is very emotive issue, just like my co-professor said, and we have to fight to get independent Maharashtra separated from Gujarat state at the cost of 106 martyrs who gave their life for the cause of Marathi. So Marathi culture is basically shaped by Marathi language. Or any language is, any culture of any state is shaped by the language only. Language and culture are synonyms. So we want to preserve it, and that's why this opposition based on the national policy framework and our desire to preserve our language
So,
in the purest form.
the 2 points to be noted here. One is that though there is no requirement under the new education policy
Yeah.
that there, up till 5,
It is
fifth
crystal
standard,
clear, I have
yeah,
pointed out.
only after primary school you are required to go for 3 languages.
Yeah.
Still, a state like Maharashtra, without any demand from anybody, suddenly comes up with this government order that, okay, Hindi will be taught
Yeah.
also in primary school. So that actually raises a question of the link between political power and the power that the language acquires, right? The famous saying that, okay, a language is a dialect that has an army and navy. So what does it say about Maharashtra's changed politics, where a state actually fought for its linguistic identity, suddenly goes to the other extreme, where even when it is not required, it actually goes to doing this.
That is the puzzling everybody right now. Why our government think proper to introduce the third language as a Hindi language compulsorily? Because in Maharashtra, after formation, the first Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Sundar Chauhan, said that Marathi should be language of the knowledge, and one day we should teach the university education, college in Marathi language. So then the language of knowledge and language of people should be synonymous. So that is the vision of our first Chief Minister. And we have tried our level best. There are some discrepancies, some up and downs. And because of people from other states coming to Maharashtra, getting for employment, and there was the influx of, in 1970s, of southern states coming to Mumbai, getting jobs. Then the Shiv Sena was formed by Balasaheb Thackeray with the plank that son of the soil plank, and all jobs should go to Marathi people. And these other peoples are eroding our culture. Then the influx of northern states, Hindi-speaking states started coming. And they came in Mumbai, they are welcome, because our constitution guarantee freedom of job and travel. So, but they are not learning Marathi language. And we are so tolerant, Marathi people. We never question them. When they say, I don't know Marathi, please speak Hindi. And we are so tolerant that we started speaking Marathi, Hindi. And because Marathi people know Hindi quite well, thanks to the Bollywood, because Mumbai is the capital of Bollywood, are producing a lot of Hindi films, and Marathi people easily understand. And half of Maharashtra, Marathwada and Vidarbha region, is under the Nizam state of Hyderabad. So Hindustani language, which is a mixture of Hindi and Urdu, is well known. It is widespread in Maharashtra. So Marathi people are very much familiar with the Hindi. So we have no quarrel with Hindi. But because of imposition of the culture, it is not cultural war. War is a very harsh word. I can say the cultural domination of Hindi on Marathi culture, that is the worrisome factor. And
No,
it
if I
is
just
increasing day by day.
If I may just intervene one little bit, this is the, hit at the crux of the problem. Hindu zealots have the knack of antagonizing even people who already know Hindi. This I think is a fundamental problem. The politics behind the imposition of Hindi, the attempt to, force it down the throats of unwilling people is at the very crux of this issue. And I think, I want to also go back a little in time. So the question of the unity of the nation and language, this is at the crux of this debate. What we find is that, historically, Indian nationalism became stronger for the first time. It became a mass phenomenon only when the regional languages developed and the message of the nation was propagated through the various regional languages. If you look at the history of the freedom struggle from around the beginning of the 20th century, when the languages of each region began to articulate the message of nationalism and freedom struggle, that's when it became powerful. That's why by 1920, when Mahatma Gandhi becomes the kind of leader of the mass movement, he reorganizes the Indian National Congress on linguistic lines. Even though there was no Tamil Nadu at that time or no Andhra Pradesh at that time, you had the Congress organization was divided based on language. And that actually strengthened the nationalist struggle rather than weakened it.
But Chalapathy, so we
But
could...
just I want to add, still what he says is quite true. But we are in search of one common language that should be national language or link language. And Mahatma Gandhi during his period advocated Hindustani language. It is a mixture of Hindi and Urdu. It is a common, it can be understood by all people, almost all people. And because of his influence and his style of working, we should not impose language. It should be taught with compassion, with love. So people can accept it. So Hindustani, at that time, there was great debate in the Constitutional Assembly, but somehow the Hindi people, Hindi speaking people, North people, they oppose. And
So,
they want, they don't want Hindustan, they want Sanskritized Hindi.
Yeah, Mr. Deshmukh, I'll just... So, at the early 20th century, while the idea of nation building is progressing, so you have two strands of language debate. One is within the heartland, the strip of Indian heartland, where today is UP particularly, you have this debate between Hindi and Urdu. These are all, Hindi itself being a construct that is emerging in that debate. And then you have a separate debate, which is the Hindi/Hindustani/Urdu in relation with regional languages. For the lack of another word, I am using these regional languages. Now, how the Indian national movement responded to it, I think it may not be as linear as I would join issue with you on that thing, as you put it, because we see at various points in which, like as you said, Gandhi was open to the idea of linguistic identity, but at the time of constitution, there was a resistance to the idea of linguistic identity. Can you just recall that? Yeah.
In the debates in the Constituent Assembly, this issue was clinched with the casting vote, as we all know. Through the casting vote was how, Hindi became the official language and English was given the associate official language status. Even at that time, the leaders who were strongly committed to the Congress vision of the Indian nation, they expressed their dissent. People like, Subbarayan and others strongly argued that, this gives an unfair advantage to Hindi. That is why, this idea of, giving it sole official status was postponed. And in 1965, Hindi was to become the official language, and that actually led to this mass agitation in the Tamil-speaking regions, and that is where the various self-immolations took place, and that is when we find the rise of DMK. So whenever something is tried to be pushed through force, without dialogue, without debate, without taking into account the aspirations of the various sections of the people, this leads to problems. As it was said famously in, I forget the name of the parliamentarian in Sri Lanka, D. Silva, I think. He said, two languages, one nation. If you have one language, then you have two nations. So what should lead to the forging of a stronger nation and nationhood? If you do these kind of, forced impositions, it actually
How would
develops.
you respond to the argument of the supporters of the new education policy that the current three language formula is actually a much liberal, generous version of the previous three language formula, wherein in this one there is no compulsory Hindi. It is any two Indian languages. Would you accept that argument?
So what happens is the non-Hindi speaking people, especially in South India, they do not believe in the bona fide of these kind of arguments. Everything is seen as way to bring Hindi through the back door. And the experience has taught them that this is largely true. Okay? So you have a three-language policy. Originally, the idea was that people in North India would study a South Indian language. What happened to it? Instead of, nobody studied Tamil, nobody studied Malayalam, nobody studied Telugu or Kannada or Tulu or other languages. So, in various forms, because there is a trust deficit. When any argument comes or any policy comes, experience has taught us that this is a way to bring Hindi through the back door. And the experience of the last 30, 40 years, the way South India has grown, is that basically people believe that Hindi is a lost cause. Earlier, the argument that Hindi could be an avenue, it would open up avenues for employment, is now completely debunked. Right? It's there staring in your face. While Tamil Nadu and the other southern states have made great progress because of their access to English, they could capitalize on the opportunities opened up by globalization and liberalization from the 1990s. So far, I haven't seen convincing arguments coming from Hindu zealots. In fact, they don't even try to argue. They just try to, assert the importance of Hindi. I think that is where the problem comes.
We'll touch upon this notion that Sanskrit is somehow the mother of all Indian languages. What is the historical circumstances in which that argument came?
That is not the truth.
Yeah, it's not the truth, but how did that actually become popular as an argument? And
Yes, please. It is not true that Sanskrit is the mother of all Indian languages. That is not true. Tamil is the oldest language, and similarly, when Marathi was granted classical language status, we have shown that it is also equally oldest language at par with the Tamil. Because in Tamil Sangam literature, there was mention of conversation between two priests in Marathi. So it was also one of the oldest classical languages. So, and Sanskrit is not that much older. So that is not true. But because of Brahminical religion and their imposition of their language and their religion, which is of elite class only. Only Brahmin people are allowed to teach, learn. So that is the one thing. In Maharashtra, Saint Dhaneshwar in 13th century opposed that Sanskrit, and he revolted against that Sanskrit, and he wrote Dhaneshwari, which is a critique of Bhagavad Gita, which is much more larger, with good Marathi language, with imagination, all the things. And from that, the legacy of saint poet in Marathi get momentum, and we have already completely separated from the Sanskrit. Now Sanskrit is not much liked by Marathi people, though we have one Sanskrit university at Ramtek, Nagpur. Just few people are, less than 100 people learning Sanskrit language. In fact, in India, there are more than 24 Sanskrit universities, and students' number is in few thousands only, or not 2,000. So Sanskrit in today's present circumstances is not relevant to learn. It is not, it is language of religion and philosophy of the bygone era. Now the current, it is not suited to the current knowledge. So all the modern knowledge, basically it is in English. Now all our regional languages like Marathi, Tamil, they are also gaining momentum and they are becoming the knowledge, language of knowledges. So Sanskritization is now becoming less and less. And this is thanks to the social reform taking place all over Maharashtra and India also. When Mahatma Jyotiba Phule started to teach women and SC/ST people, then in true sense, we started learning in India for first time. There was no school concept in India.
So there is a Sanskritic cultural sphere which actually moves with the carriers of that language and culture from what was called Aryavarta and to the geographical peripheries of this country. And most of the regional language identity politics is also developing a kind of antagonistic relationship with the Sanskrit and the culture that it carries. So in the Dravidian identities in earlier stages itself, the argument that Tamil and Shaivism are interlinked as a cultural legacy of Tamil-speaking people and opposed to Sanskrit and its associated cultural practices. That was the basis, broadly speaking, of Dravidian identity politics.
So let me just expand it a little bit. See, one of the great intellectual achievements of the scientific study of language, which originates in the late 18th century in Europe, is that the understanding that languages are related to each other in familial terms. So the concept of the Indo-European languages and a subset of it, which is the Indo-Aryan languages, and then subsequently the Dravidian family of languages. This relationship is well established. Now we know very clearly that Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, they all belong to the Indo-European family of languages. And the Dravidian languages are distinct with their own familial connections. So this is the linguistic part of it. But if you look at it culturally, how it has developed over the last 2000 years, or more specifically, after the rise of the Bhakti movement, what we find, to give example from the Tamil language, is that while there is a very dominant influence of Shaivism in the Tamil language, but Tamil is central to how Sri Vaishnavism also developed. The biggest theological debates in the Sri Vaishnavist tradition in the 13th, 14th century is centered around the importance given to language, whether it is primacy is given to Sanskrit or Tamil. So, and similarly, all the devotional movements, the bhakti movements which develop all over India, giving rise to what has been called the vernacular millennium. We find that around the turn of the second millennium, in large parts of India, the so-called regional languages, they all grow in opposition to Sanskrit. They become full-fledged, empowered languages only by their opposition to Sanskrit. I think this is a very important historical lesson to be learned, which helps us to understand the kind of power that is backed, that is behind the power of language.
But in the long arc of history, even the claim of Shaivism as a separate cultural entity is now very difficult to sustain because it has been subsumed under the larger term that we now call Hinduism. So, is that is an irreversible trajectory of how a country is moving towards a more homogenizing or homogenized version of both language and religious culture?
See, if you once again looking at the long arc of Indian history, you have both tendencies, both centrifugal and centripetal tendencies. When one is emphasized over the other, then you find there is a reaction. When you try to emphasize homogeneity, people emphasizing difference, their voice becomes more vociferous. When the emphasis is on division, then people talk about.
No, ignoring emphasis by the state and its instruments, just as a natural historical process. For example, if you take Mumbai Hindi, what is it called? There is a particular version of Hindi that is being spoken in
It is called Mumbai Hindi.
Mumbai Hindi.
Mumbai
So
Hindi.
that is an outcome of the changing demographic composition of the city itself. Because of the moving people, there is an expansion of a Hindi cosmopolis which is getting a national traction. In fact, one could argue that the Maharashtra governments or Maharashtra's current governments attempt to, even without anybody asking, have Hindi is a part of a response to that changing demographic of Maharashtra itself.
Partly, yes, but basically under the grab of Hindutva politics, they thought that we have one religion, one language, but that is not true. Though Hindu religion is propagated, we are practicing throughout the India, but it has cultural dimensions differently, different cultural dimensions, and each state has its own language which is linked with the Hindu philosophy or Hindu religion. So, one language and one religion is not workable in India. It is not practically possible. Though they are trying to impose Hindi to propagate Hindutva, that will not succeed in long term. That is one thing. And culturally, we are united.
No, sir, if I may ask, the Mumbai Hindi is not the standardized Sanskritized Hindi that is sought to be promoted, if I understand correctly, right? It's an organically evolving language in Mumbai.
Not only Mumbai, in Maharashtra and basically the Deccan Plateau, Telangana and Marathwada region. There the Urdu was initiated. It is called Dakhani language.
Dakhini.
It is a mixture of Hindi and Urdu. They have taken some Persian words, some local words from local dialect, and some words from the Sanskrit and Hindi. So it is a mixture, and it is easy to understand. And it is the language of the common people, basically the soldiers who are working under the various princely states like Nizam and others. They are speaking that language for communication and day-to-day purpose. From that, it evolved Hindustani language, and once it is told that Hindi and Urdu are one, but it was separated, and Hindi take the turn of Sanskritized version, and Urdu take version of Persian, more dominant Persian phrases. So they are become separated. Once a few years back, few decades back, it was synonym. Because of some cultural politics, it was separated, and now there is no meeting ground.
Right. So I'll just refer to before you, this recent work by Peggy Mohan, where she cites Dakhini as a perfect mix of Indus languages and Dravidian, Indus Valley languages and Dravidian languages. So the argument being that this idea of pure languages is an overstatement in any context, because languages evolve, because people move and their tongues mix. How would you?
Absolutely. Languages are not artificial constructs. They evolve organically. They are subject to all the historical forces. No language can exist in isolation. There are great amount of lexical borrowings. Lexical borrowings are extensive. But beyond that, there are certain structural elements which are unique to each language. It depends what we want to emphasize. But I do want to, just take 1 or 2 minutes to talk about, your comment about the influence
1
of,
minute. We have in 5 minutes we'll take questions also. Yes.
Religion on the Tamil language. I would say this is also largely true for Malayalam also. What we find in the last 100 years is that Tamil, Malayalam, they have all become highly secularized from being languages heavily influenced by the religious idiom. They have become extremely secular. Tamil language, I have made this argument in detail, that from being very heavily influenced and being indebted to Saivite religion is no more that kind of a language. It is a democratic language. It has accommodated various religious and regional influences within the Tamil speaking region, and that is the way to go. We cannot artificially preserve languages in some pure form.
Okay, so I have the same question to both of you as a concluding question, and then we'll take a few questions from the audience. So you referred to Chinnaswamy's suicide in 1964. That is so after that, there were several people who actually committed suicide for the cause of Tamil. So the slogan apparently then was Udal Mannukku and Uyir Tamilukku. So most of us who think that we are rational people think that linguistic identity is more rational than religious identity. Would you argue that?
Certainly, because language and culture have organic relations, and both supplement each other and they grow together. So the cultural identity related linked with the local language is much more influential, much more important for people, common people, than the religion. Religion is no doubt is there, but to link a language with the religion is not proper in Indian context, I can say. So it is basically our behavior, our culture is shaped by the language.
Is linguistic identity more rational than religious identity?
Well, these are, I wouldn't post things in such stark fashions. But if you push me, I would say one is the Silla and other is the Charybdis. Anything taken beyond a point is bound to create problems rather than serve the larger human good.
Well, on that note, is anybody in the audience would like to? Oh, okay. So we can have the mic to that lady here.
My name is Bhumika, and I wanted to ask you, with respect to the Constituent Assembly debates and the Munshi Iyengar formula that ultimately happened, if you were part of the Constituent Assembly debates at that time, what would you have felt would be the best way to resolve? Because I think with respect to linguistic and religious identity, India is the original melting pot. So how would you feel would be the best way to resolve such a complicated question at that time?
All right, okay, we'll take two more questions. The mic, okay, we'll take three more questions actually. Yeah, you have a mic there? Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Deshmukh, I have a question for you. Being a Marathi from Mumbai, staying here in Bangalore, don't you think that this whole Hindi debate is honestly, it's of complete useless? First, we should be worried about Marathi. मी आता एक article बघत होतो, 17,500 Marathi schools are on the verge of closing. Well, are we worried about it? Rather than going somewhere on Hindi, why not we take care of Marathi first and possibly the same for the other languages as well?
Yes, your question is clear. Can you just pass the mic to the gentleman behind you? Yeah.
Mr. George, you said about the Babel of voices. Now, for the benefit of those who don't know what is Babel of voices.
Oh, no. I think we will have to hold on to that thought.
No.
If you have a question, please ask that question. Otherwise,
okay. I'll put the question like this.
Yeah.
The discussion that you had, all of three of you, moderated by you, has not led us to anywhere about the language and the identity wars of shaping the culture. I think it was a Babel of voices.
Thank you. It is going on for the last 1 century. So, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yeah.
Yes, I am Saroja. I'm from North Karnataka. So I studied Kannada in the primary school, 1st through 4th. At the 5th grade, I got English, and the 6th grade, I got Hindi, and I'm very happy about all of those. Sanskrit was not introduced to me when I came about 11th grade or 10th grade. They introduced where I had just crossed from there. So at the earlier age, we are open for any languages, okay? And one nation, one language, what it means is that they are not saying, in my opinion, that you take away your Kannada, you take away your Marathi. They are not saying that. They are saying, me as one person, first start as a Kannada or whatever Marathi, have English and then have this Hindi. That way they are saying one nation, one thing. They are not stepping on your state languages.
Can you come to the question?
And, yes. So why in Tamil Nadu can't you introduce Hindi as a optional language? At that age, we can grasp anything. And by having that, when I go meet some other people of our own state people like Gujarati, Punjabi, and I met them in different countries where I'm able to converse with them because of Hindi.
Thank you, ma'am. The mic here to the... No.
Small question.
Yeah, okay, then quickly. Yeah.
You said some of the points here.
Yeah.
Sanskrit is not a... Sanskrit, you said, is a religion language. Sanskrit speak only by Brahmins.
Who said? Nobody has said any of these things.
You said,
So
Mr. Deshmukh said,
yeah, please.
Sanskrit is spoken by Brahmins. Sanskrit is a religion language. Sanskrit is not an old language.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with these points.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you oppose Hindi and Sanskrit, but you don't oppose English. You don't oppose Arabic language.
Yeah, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Your question. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Please don't do that.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
You just divide the people, don't divide the people.
Yes, ma'am. The question.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that my grandfather was part of the constitutional debates, and he was a fierce opponent of Hindi as a national language. So I just wanted to say that there's a whole constitutional background to this that has to be looked into, and all the amendments that have followed as well, have clearly pointed out that Hindi cannot be imposed.
Right. Okay. On those questions, I think that is the constitutional, particularly the Constituent Assembly debates. Would you like to quickly refresh that because we avoided that in the initial segment? Since there are two questions on that, would you be able to do that? Can you please not...
Please. Mr. Burgess?
No, come on. One second. Calm. Yeah, Constituent Assembly debate on language.
That debate, this issue was extensively debated, and it happened in a certain context. As the country was going to be divided, the makers of the Constitution were acutely aware of the possibilities of further divisions coming up through language. It was in that context it was debated. Now times have changed. We have had 75 years of experience, so we are looking at it very differently. So what would I have done in those times? And only thing I can say is that the members of the Constituent Assembly were much wiser and more well-read than me. That is the only thing I can say. Historians are not the best persons to give answers. They can only talk about things in retrospect.
Yeah, and there's another question there, which is that fewer and fewer people actually want to study in a Malayalam medium or a Marathi medium or a Tamil medium school. How do you respond to that?
That is true. I must admit, it is the question only Maharashtra. It is all over Himalayan. We are opening more and more schools in English mediums, and nearly 30 to 40% students in Maharashtra, in Tamil, I have statistic, they are learning English medium. And if we cross 50% mark, then the local language of that state, it starts declining, and there is no chance to revive it. So this is the time to think how can we strengthen our local regional languages. And you said, why you are not opposing English? In India, today's segment says, nobody will oppose. There was one slogan, English Hatao by Ram Manohar Lohia. Now nobody will say that. On the contrary, we are building the temple of English deity in UP.
Fair.
So English opposition, because the politics of languages, various languages, strengthen the English language all over India. That is the two things.
Yeah, what is your thought? Why there is a decreasing demand for vernacular language, regional languages as a medium of instruction? No, sorry, we have to now
It's
wrap
very
up.
simple, For the its aspirational needs of Indians are served by the English language. That is why people flock to English.
Okay. And then there was a question about why not as many languages as possible?
Well, in theory, yes. But how do you formulate it as a policy? How do you work it out as a policy which doesn't discriminate, giving unfair advantage to one section of the people and putting others at a disadvantage? These are the issues that need to be kept in mind. As a general principle, yes, the more, the merrier.
Well, that brings an end to a very lively discussion. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Venkatachalapathy. Thank you, Mr. Deshmukh. Thank you all.